All right, Rabbi, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. Sure to thank our annual TALMUD Torah sponsor for Tafshin Pehei, the Tilson Family, for dedicating all of the Shirman Joshua this year as a zechus for besuros tovos for Am Yisroel. TALMUD Torah sponsors for the month of Adler, Teri and Steve Zinn, loving memory of Teri's father, Dr. Kahn, Tzvi, Hersch, Ben, Yosef, HaKohen, the Ziv, Lavine, and Behrman families in memory of Willian Ziv, Zev Shmuel, Ben Yisroel, and our week of learning sponsors, Nathan and Beth Adler in memory of Judy, Goldman, Yehudis, Esther, Beth, Elozer, zechus. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD Torah, all of the neshamas and aliyah, the families in Nechama, all those who need a refuah shavon, together with Kol Cholei Yisrael, Kadosh Baruch Hu Shemir Tashem bring home all of our hostages, and our holy soldiers should be successful. B'chol Maaseh Yedeim. With that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today, Baruch Hashem. Good. Okay, today's daf is Tzadik Zayin, 97. We are picking up on Tzadik Vav Amud Beis, second line down in the wide lines. So also remember again, we left off on the cliffhanger yesterday of Sanhedrin, Nevud Zaran, after killing almost 1 million people, having this desire to convert, recognizing again the enormity of his actions, and ready to go ahead and join the ranks of Klal Yisrael. So the Gemara now picks up on that theme. The Gemara says, Tarabanon, Naaman, Ger Toshav Haya. So Naaman, Rabbi, who was the general of Aram, also responsible for spilling much Jewish blood. So Naaman became a Ger Toshav. Now, Rabbi, Ger Toshav usually means a non-Jew who repudiates idolatry, accepts Shem Mitzvos B'nai Noach, and lives in Eretz Yisrael. That's the general definition of a Ger Toshav. So Naaman became a Ger Toshav. Nevud Zaran, Ger Tzedek. Now it's interesting. So the Gemara seems to indicate over here that Nevud Zaran really became Ger Tzedek, means a Ger. He converted. Mibnei Banav Shal Sisra, Lamdu Tari Yushalayim. Sisra's grandsons. Remember again, Sisra, the general who went against the Jewish people, defeated by Barak and Yael. Am Sisra, we read the Haftarah in Rosh Hashanah. Vatiyaviv Am Sisra, his mother's cries serve as the basis for a lot of what we do in Tkiyah Shofar. So Bnei Banav Shal Sisra Lamdu Torah B'Yushalayim. So the grandsons of Sisra learned Torah in Yerushalayim. Bnei Banav Shal Sanhedrin Limdu Torah B'Rabim. The grandsons of Sanhedrin taught Torah in public. Umanin, who were these grandsons of Sisra who taught Torah in public? Shmaya and Avtalyon. That's wild. Remember, Shmaya and Avtalyon were who? They were the Rebbeim of Hillel and Shammai. Right? So Shmaya and Avtalyon, the Rebbeim of Hillel and Shammai, themselves were descendants or grandsons of Sanhedrin. Mibnei Banav Shel Haman, Lamdu Torah Mibnei Brak. Haman's grandsons learned Torah in Bnei Brak. Va'af Mibnei Banav Shel Osa Rasha, Bikesh HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Lachnisan Tachas HaShechina. Even the grandsons of Nebuchadnezzar were going to become Jewish. What happened? The Malachim said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono shel olam, mi shehechrev es beisecha, v'sarf es echalecha, tachnis tachas kanti hashchina. So the Malachim said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, no. What's going on over here? Could it be that someone who destroyed your Beis HaMikdash, someone who destroyed your city, someone who did so many terrible things to your children, such a person like this should merit to have his family come underneath the wings of the Shekhinah? What's interesting seems to be that the Malachim convinced HaKadosh Baruch Hu not to allow Nebuchadnezzar's descendants from joining the ranks of Klal Yisrael. Hainu Dichsiv, Rafinu es Bavel v'lo nifrasa. We tried to heal Bavel, but it cannot be healed. So we'll say this idea that Bavel could have been healed technically by the conversion of Nebuchadnezzar's children. But Bavel was so broken. Bavel was such a state of disrepair. Bavel did so much to us that they were beyond repair. Incredible. Ula Amr says that refers to something else. Ula Amr is Nebuchadnezzar. This refers to Nebuchadnezzar. That there was no going back to Nebuchadnezzar. No chill for Nebuchadnezzar. No cathartic change for him. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani Amr Elu Naros Bavel. The Tirgama Ditzinaisa de Bavloi. Some say that it refers to the rivers of Bavel. Rashi says over here, it's the second last Rashi on the right hand side. Elu Naros Bavel Shem Ra'im Lishtos. The waters are very bitter, and there's no way to sweeten those waters. The Gemara says, Tzitzainaisa de Bavloi, Rashi says, Dekalim Marimheim Sha'omdim Benaros. Ultimately, again, they have bitter date palms. Not only Not only are the waters bitter, but ultimately, again, the date palms that grow by the water are also bitter. And I will say, it's interesting, by the way, that the Gemara says that the one thing you can't heal is naros bavel. Reminiscent of the capital of Tilim, al naros bavel, sham bachinu, v'zachrinu es Sion. Right? Shavian shanu gamachinu v'zachrinu es Sion. The naros bavel, that image, is remembering when Klal Yisrael is being led out from Eretz Yisrael, destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. We sat by the rivers of Bavel and we cried and we remembered. It's almost as if the Ribono Shel Olam says, there are some things in this world that are unforgivable. There are some things or some people or some things that are unredeemable. As crazy as that sounds, because we believe that everything is redeemable, everything is changeable. No, there's some evil that's perpetrated in this world that simply cannot be undone. So the Gemara says what Nebuchadnezzar did to our people, simply beyond redemption, cannot be changed, cannot be uplifted, cannot be redeemed. Incredible. So the Gemara says as follows. So we'll say, but I'll just point out, a lot of the Chavra asked after yesterday's daf. So clearly what's interesting is, Nebuchadnezzar, his offspring, there's no indication Nebuchadnezzar ever wanted to convert, right? He had no desire. But his descendants wanted to, they were blocked. But yet Nebuchadnezzar did go ahead and convert. So it's interesting, what exactly does that mean and who converted him? So there's a sefer called Chukas Hager. In it, he has a lot of discussions about Gerus and a lot of interesting cases. He brings down a shaila where after the war, there was a particular Nazi guard who wanted to convert. And again, he obviously had tremendous charata for what it is that he did. And he came before, I forgot the author of the sefer, his name, and to convert. And it was a shayla. And there were people who were there who said, how do you convert this guy? After all, we know what he did. We saw what he did. We experienced the cruelty at his hands. And the Mechaber, the Chukas Hager says, the Lashon he says is, based on halacha yevesha. Right? It's an interesting expression. Halacha yevesha, like cold hard fact. Cold hard halacha, you should be able to convert. The halacha is if somebody becomes a Baal Tshuva, right, and they mamash repent for their past, they should be able to convert. But he says, but how can you convert such a person like this? How could a person like this be welcomed into Am Yisroel after everything that he did? How could it be? How could it be that a person were to behave in such an egregious fashion with such cruelty towards Am Yisroel, and then we would welcome him into our ranks? So he paskin, don't convert him. But what's interesting is, you don't often find this in halacha. It was much more an emotional psak than it was a legal psak. Because the legal psak is, you could convert. If the guy's sincere and he mamish has charot, you can convert him. But emotionally, how could such a person like that be welcomed into the ranks of Klal Yisrael? So it's interesting, by the way, where it says that Nebuchadnezzar became a ger, right? Who converted him? Which Beis Din took responsibility for this? It is interesting to note that the lashon by Nebuchadnezzar is arak. He ran away, which seems to indicate that he just went off somewhere else, not part of community, not part of regular Jewish people. He went off. What does it mean that he converted? Does it mean that he went through a formal process? Does it mean that he just accepted upon himself to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? We don't know, but just interesting to point out. Okay, weiter. Amar Ula. Ula says as follows. Amar Moav, Shiva v'bishad Yerushalayim havu. Amar Moav, we're bad neighbors to Yerushalayim. How so? When the Ammon and Moav heard that the Navi was prophesying about the destruction of Yerushalayim, Shalchu Nebuchadnezzar. They sent word to Nebuchadnezzar. In other words, what the Gemara is pointing out over here is what prompted Nebuchadnezzar to go ahead and attack Yerushalayim, especially after seeing what happened to Sanhedrin. What prompted him to do it? So the Gemara says, Ammon and Moav heard the Navi prophesying that Yerushalayim is going to be destroyed. So they sent to Nebuchadnezzar, Puk Vita. Time for you to come. Nebuchadnezzar, Klal Yisrael is weak. Klal Yisrael is going to be destroyed. Puk Vita. Come and literally again, look and come. Amar, Mistafina Dalala Abruli Kidibai Bekamai. So again, Nebuchadnezzar said, I'm afraid that they're going to do to me what they did to their previous enemies, meaning again, he's referring to Sanhedrin. Shal Chulei Ke'ein Ha'ish Beveso. The Ish is not home. Ve'ein Haderech Merachok. So I'm sorry, Haloch Miderech Rachok. So the Gemara says, Ve'ein Ish, who's the Ish? Ela Kodesh Baruch Hu. So the Ish means, so he said, the man is not home, which means Kodesh Baruch Hu has left his home. Shneimar Hashem Ish Milchama. So ultimately, again, they tell Nebuchadnezzar, this is a ripe time. Kadosh Baruch Hu has abandoned Klal Yisrael, you should come and fight. Sholchulhu, B'krivo Huvasi, so he says, well, maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu is close by. In other words, maybe the Rebbe Shalom, as much as it looks like he's left Klal Yisrael now, when they're in a state of need, he will return. Shalchulei halach b'derech merachok. No, God has really abandoned them. God is really far away. Shalach lahu, islahu tzadiki d'bay rachami umaysilei. Well, Klal Yisrael has tzadikim. And tzaddikim have the koach hatfilah, and when they daven, they'll bring HaKadosh Baruch Hu back. Shalchu leitzur hakesaf lakach biyado ben kesef al tzaddikim. The ish has taken his bundle of money with him, and what's the bundle of money? The kesef is tzaddikim. Shnei amar ve'echra li bechamisha sar kesef v'chomer seorim v'lesech sorim. Shalchu lehu hadri rishi b'tshuva ubayimach rachami umaysilei. Both said this conversation is absolutely incredible. So Nebuchadnezzar says, okay, well, even if the ish is gone right now, and the tzaddikim are gone right now, what's going to happen? So the Rishaim will do tshuva. So the Rishaim of Klal Yisrael. The Rishaim of Klal Yisrael will do tshuva, and they'll ultimately, again, bring HaKadosh Baruch Hu back to the Beis HaMikdash. So the Gemara says, Shalchulei kvar kavalahen zman. No, so essentially, Amun Moav said it's too late. HaKadosh Baruch Hu already decreed, and not only that, he even set a time for the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Shnei amar liyom hakasa yavo lebeso. Ein kasa elazman. Shnei amar bakasa liyom chagenu. Rosh Hashanah. So Shalchulu, so Nebuchadnezzar said, Sisvahu v'lo matzina da'asi mitigla omimitra. It's winter time already, fall, winter, right? And I can't come because of the snow, because of the rain. So I'll say, by the way, what you clearly see from here is something fascinating, which is Nebuchadnezzar doesn't want to come. He doesn't want to come. In other words, he has just a bad feeling about this, that even if somehow he's successful, the repercussions and ramifications will be overwhelming. So I don't want to come. The weather is very bad. Shalchullah, they said to him, don't worry about it. Ta ashina the TORAH. When you come to Eretz Yisrael, so navigate yourself around the mountains. In other words, go ahead and travel by the base of the mountains. That way the mountains will shield you from the rain and the snow. Shnei amar shalchul kar moshel eres misalam midbar al har Tzion el har basion. Shalach lehu iyasina lesli duchta diasivna bei. Nebuchadnezzar says, if I come, there's no place for me to stay. In other words, there's no place for me to house my army. So Gemara says, don't worry about it. They sent back to him. Shalchulei kivros shalahem mulim nipaltin shalcha. The graves of the Jews are even nicer than your palaces. Nebuchadnezzar. Dechsev ba'esehinu umar Hashem yotzias atzmos malchi Yehuda ves atzmos sarav ves atzmos HaKohanim ves atzmos hanavim ves atzmos Yoshe Yerushalayim kivrayim v'shatchum l'shamayim v'le'arech l'chotzel l'shamayim asher ha'avam v'asher avdum v'asher alchu acharehem. Amar lei Rav Nachman Rabbi Yitzchak mishmi lecha. So what I saw again. So that's the end of the story. So it's just interesting to note over here. First of all, again, I will say just the general. It's not a new thing that there's animosity from our neighbors towards us, right? Like, what do Ammon and Moav have to get involved in this? Well, those are our cousins, right? Why do they have to get involved? Elamai, Ammon and Moav come, and they incite Nebuchadnezzar ultimately again to march against Yerushalayim. Incredible. I will say now, the Gemara switches back to the topic of Mashiach. So remember again, up until now, the focus really was on Yemosa Mashiach. Now the Gemara is going to focus a little bit more on Mashiach himself. Some really beautiful Gemaras ahead of us. Amalei Rav Nachman Rabbi Yitzchak. Mishmi Lecha. Say this is incredible. Have you heard anything? Amos Asi Bar Nafli. When is Bar Nafli coming? Now, who Bar Nafli is? We'll see in just a moment. When is he coming? So the Gemara is Amalei Man Bar Nafli. Who's Bar Nafli? Amalei Mashiach. Bar Nafli is Mashiach. So the Gemara says Mashiach Bar Nafli Karisle. Mashiach is called Bar Nafli. Amalei in, yes, he is. Tichsev Bayomahu Akim. I will say top of Tzadik Zayin 97a. Akim Esukas David Hanofalas. I will say it's incredible. What's the Messianic era? I will lift up, literally again, I will rebuild Sukas David Hanofalas, the fallen sukkah of David HaMelech, a reference to the Beis HaMikdash. Rashi says over here, Sukas David Hanofalas, Malchus Beis David, Lahachi Kari Mashiach Bar Nafli. So it's interesting. Rashi understands over here, Sukas David Hanofalas is not the Beis HaMikdash, but rather Sukas David Hanofalas is Davidic monarchy. So one of the things that Mashiach will do, ultimately, again, is the restoration of Davidic monarchy. That's why Mashiach is called Bar Nafli, the one who lifts up fallen things. You'll say, there's something so beautiful. You think to yourself, out of all the things that Mashiach is going to do, right? Gogu Magog, Tchias HaMesim, all this other stuff, right? The one thing that he's known is he restores the Davidic monarchy. Or, by the way, also, others understand that Sukkah Savan Al-Fal is a reference to the Beis HaMikdash, right? So that's what he'd like. So say sometimes the greatest avoda in life is to rebuild things that were broken. To take something from new and rebuild it, that's one thing. But to take something that was whole and then broken and then rebuild it again, the ability to put back pieces into what they once were is sometimes the greatest avoda. So what does Mashiach do? Everything that he has, he's able to take the pieces. Harachit was able to take a monarchy that was destroyed and rebuild it. Take a structure that was destroyed and rebuild it. That's Mashiach, Bar Nafli. Incredible, Bar Nafli. Shavuot, by the way, tells us also that in ourselves, what's the greatest accomplishment of the self? To become a Baal Tshuva. What does it mean to become a Baal Tshuva? It means to take all of your broken pieces and to mend them and make them whole. If you could put yourself back together, if you could become your own Bar Nafli, take the pieces of you that are broken, take the pieces of you that are fallen, and put them back together, that is the greatest accomplishment. The Gemara goes back to Amalei Haki Amar Yochanan. Darsh will say some really incredible Gemaras over here. Darsh ben David ba Talmidei Chachamim Misatin. So we'll say we're going to see over here that there's a couple of different narratives. Well, really only two different narratives about the generation and the time that immediately precedes Mashiach. Like what ushers in Messianic era, Messianic redemption. So watch this. The Gemara says as follows. So Rabbi Yochanan says as follows: Darsha ben David ba, the generation that David HaMelech will, that Mashiach will come. Talmidei Chacham mismatin. There's a diminution, less Torah. There's less Torah to be found. There are fewer Talmidei Chachamim. V'ashar eneim kalos biyagon va'anacha. So there's fewer Talmidei Chachamim, and in general, a lot of suffering. V'tzaros rabos, terrible suffering. Ugziros kashos mischadshos, and new terrible decrees every single day. Tan Rabbanon, Shavua Sheben David Ba, the year. Shavua usually means like the 7-year cycle in which Mashiach comes. Shana Rishona Miskayim Mikrazeh. So we'll say, see now, this is the 7-year period before Mashiach comes. In that 7-year period, the following will occur. In year number 1, Shana Rishona Miskayim Mikrazeh, Imtarti al Ir Achos va'al Ir Achas lo Antir. Some cities will have food, other cities won't have food. Literally, again, I'll make it rain in one city, won't rain in a different city. Shnia, 2nd year, Chitzei Mishtalchim, famine everywhere. So in year number 1, some places have rain, some places don't have rain. Year number 2, everyone has famine. Year number 3, Shlishis Ra'av Godel Umeisim Anashim Nashim V'taf V'chasidim V'anshe Ma'isa. In year number 3, there'll be a great famine. Men, women, children die. Chasidim, Anshe Ma'isa, great people will die. V'Torah mishtachachas milamdeh. Torah will virtually be forgotten. Overwhelming. So material suffering, spiritual suffering. B'Revi'is in the 4th year, Sova ve'ena Sova. Some places have food, some places don't have food. B'Chamishis in the 5th year, Sova Gadol. There'll be a great satiety, more food. Va'ochlin v'shosin usmechen. People will eat, drink, be happy. V'Torah chozar slomda. And Torah will once again come back. Talmidei Chachamim. B'shishis kolos. In the 6th year, there'll be sounds. Rashi says over here, B'shishis kolos, Yatsu kolos sheben David ba. So there'll be murmurings, right? The people will be talking. Mashiach is close. B'shaviyas mechamos, in the 7th year war, which could mean Gog Magog, b'Mosei Shviyas ben David ba. And Mosei Shviyas, at the end of that 7th year, meaning in year number 8, that's when Mashiach comes. So we'll say, so this is a description, the Bible says a description of the 7-year cycle which precedes Messianic redemption. Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef says, but 1 second, Kama Shviyas the Havakein v'lo asa. Rabbi Yosef says, by the way, what you just described over here, that 7-year cycle, that's pretty much every 7-year cycle of Klal Yisrael. Like, in other words, what you just described is Jewish history. And I don't understand yet, Mashiach has not come. So Abaye says, B'shishis kolos, B'shviyas Mechamos Mihava. So Abai says, really? Was there ever a year 6 where ultimately, again, there were murmurings about Mashiach. And in year 7 of wars, did that order ever happen? Va'od, kisidron mihavi. Furthermore, again, what Abai responds is, it's not just that these events occur over a 7-year cycle, it's that these events occur in this order over a 7-year cycle. So has that ever happened the way this was described? And the answer to that, at least from the Gemara's perspective, is no. Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda says, Torah ben David ba, Beis Havad yel is nus. So we'll say, what you see over here is something really amazing. What you begin to see is that apparently before Mashiach comes, there is a general spiritual decline. Now, I'll just put this out. We'll see this more explicitly later. But there's like these two models about Messianic redemption. Does Mashiach come essentially almost like when things hit rock bottom, and therefore there's no choice but to redeem us? Or is redemption something we can earn, right? And we can even expedite. So just hold on to that. We'll see this framed as we go on in the coming days. Rabbi Yehuda says, Dorshav and David, the generation in which Mashiach comes, Beis Havad Yelez Nos. I will say Beis Havad is the Beis HaMedrash. The Beis HaMedrash will be turned into a place for immorality. I will say, what's the pshat? Because there will be no Talmidei Chachamim. Therefore, no one congregates there. When you have large empty spaces, and Batei Medrash, Rashi points out, we're generally like outside of the city. So when you have large spaces, unoccupied, a little bit removed from public eye, what are they used for? They use immorality. So they'll once again painting a picture of a lack of Torah. V'hagadol yechrav, the north will be destroyed. V'hagavlon yesham. And ultimately, again, Rashi says over here, Vagavla Yesha also means there's a place will be destroyed. The people who live in the border cities, because there'll be a lack of general security, will wander from place to place. And they won't find any mercy. From Tisrach, the wisdom of the Talmidei Chachamim will become putrid. In other words, will decay. People who fear sin will be despised. In other words, both saying, not only will Torah be forgotten, but those who try to be pious will be looked down upon. Upnei hadar kipnei kelef. Literally, again, the face of the generation will be like the face of a dog. Interesting, again, like we saw like Baladan in yesterday's daf. I would say so again, which means that there'll just be a general sense of spiritual decay. Va'emes ne'ederes, MS will not be found. Shene'emar v'atia MS ne'ederes, asara mishtalel. So the Gemara says, "My v'atia MS ne'ederes, amri beirav, melamed shenasis adarim v'holech esla." So literally again, MS will become like a group that will wander around, right? And those who seek MS will ultimately again become wanderers as well. My v'sar meira mishtolel, amri beirishila, kol misha samira mishtalel al habrios. Ultimately, again, anyone who tries to be samira, anyone who tries to be the right thing, will be ostracized. Rashi says there, mishtala ala brios, kala olam omer alav shotehu, han mishtala. So we'll say, so there'll be an absence of Torah, and even those who try to go ahead and do the right thing will essentially be ostracized from the community. Such a sense of spiritual decline in the greater Klal Yisrael. Amar Rava said as follows. So we'll say this is a tremendous statement, right? Rava says, in the beginning, I thought to myself, there is no truth in this world. Rava says an overwhelming statement. Rashi says, "Leka kushta ba'alma, ein adam ba'olam sheyidaber emes tamid." So let's listen to this statement. There is no person who always speaks the truth. Rav is saying, you can't find a person in this world who always speaks truth. Rav is saying, I want to point out, by the way, that statement is not even a condemnation. It could just be like a reality. Remember again, we have instances in halacha where you're allowed to go ahead and change the truth, right? Like the Gemara says, mutar l'shanas mipnei hashalom. You're allowed to go ahead and sometimes change the truth for the sake of preserving greater peace. So there's a license for that, right? There's an ability for that. So Rava says, I don't think there's a person in this world who always tells the truth. So again, someone told me, either Rav Tav Tavos, Rav Tav Yumi, this Rav Tavos, Rav Tav Yumi said, he went on record, he said, if they would give me all the money in the world, I would not lie. I would not change from the truth. So we'll say, listen to this story. So we'll say, now this Rav Tavyumi tells a story about himself. He says, one time I went to a place. The Kushta Shmei. This is great. The name of the place was Kushta. The name of the town was Truth. That was the name. And the Gemara says, "V'lo hava mishane b'diburayu, v'lo hava misinchimi hasam below zmane." So we'll say, in this place called Truth, what was the residency requirement? Residency requirement was, you cannot lie. You always have to tell the truth. Now, interestingly enough, no one ever died before their time. Now, listen, what does that mean, or die before their time? Apparently no one died young. No one died young. People lived to ripe old ages there, and they died like that. So what happens? Rav Tavyumi said, I came to this place, I liked it a lot, I decided to settle down. Nesibi Isasaminun, I married a woman from Kushta. Now watch this. So the Gemara says, I married her from there. We had two sons. So it was one day, my wife was washing her hair. This is Rav Tavyumi saying, his wife was washing her hair. Asai Shifta Tarfa Adasha. So the neighbor came along, right? Her friend came along, knocked on the door and asked me, is your wife home? Now Rav Tavyumi felt, Lav Orach Ara, Amrla La Sahacha. Rav Tavyumi felt it wasn't sneeze to say my wife is washing her hair, right? She's taking a bath. It wasn't right. So instead what he said is, no, I'm sorry, she's not home. She's not home. So I said, so what happened? Shrivulei Tartan Benin. My two sons passed away. Two sons passed away. So the townspeople came over to me and said, what is this? Or this doesn't happen in our town. Why did your sons pass away? So I told them, this is what happened. So Rav Tavyumi realized that what ended up happening over here is he lied. He lied. Now granted, he lied for good reason because he was protecting the dignity of his wife. He felt he was with Amrulay. So they said to him, B'matusa minach puk me'asrin. They asked him, if you don't mind, please leave our town. Please leave our town and do not bring death to our townspeople. But it's an overwhelming story. So I'll say, so again, now this goes in line with what Rava was saying, that you can't really find a person in this world who always tells the truth. That is a true statement. You can't always find a person in this world. Because even if you have a town like Kushta, right? What was the population of Kushta? 4? How many people are living there, right? So that's fine. You can maybe create like a pocket like that. But at the end of the day, that's not the normal way that people live. Because we'll say sometimes life does require us to go ahead and bend the truth a little bit for certain circumstances. Incredible. Tanya Rabbi Norai Omer. Dorsha ben David Ba. So we'll say once again, a description of the Messianic generation. The generation that Mashiach comes in. So the Gemara says, Na'arim yalbinu pnei zekenim. The young will embarrass the old. Uzekenim ya'amdu lefnei na'arim. And the elders will be forced to give respect to the younger ones. So I will say, so there's going to be like this sense of like generational, like impunity, like this sense of generational disrespect. So the young will disrespect the old. The old will be forced to respect the young. Ubas kan b'ima, a daughter will rebel against her mother. V'kala bechamusa, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Upnei hadar ki pnei kalev. The face of the generation will be like the face of a dog. Ve'ein haben mispayesh me'aviv. And ultimately, again, a son will not be embarrassed in front of his father. I will say, by the way, I just want to point out, you remember this Gemara? Ben Sorar Umora? Remember this? Even the Ben Sorar Umora, he steals the money from his father, but where does he eat the meat and wine? Where does he eat it? In someone else's rishos. Why? Because there's an inherent embarrassment that a son has in the presence of his father that he's not going to transgress. In the generation of Mashiach, there's going to be such a lack of decency that a son doesn't even have any embarrassment from his father. I'll say first wide line, Tanya. Rabbi Nechemiah says, Dorsha ben David ba ha'azus tirba. Azus means, I don't know what the good English word for azus is, brazenness, right? Brazenness will proliferate. Vayoker ya'aves. Gaiva, Rashi says, Shal yichadu zeh yakar kavod. So again, there will be such arrogance that no one will give honor one to the other. V'hagefen yitain pirio, the vine will produce many grapes. V'hayayin biyoger, but wine will be very expensive. What does that mean? The vine will produce a lot of grapes, but the wine will still be very expensive. So Rashi points out over what that means. There's going to be a lot of wine consumption. In other words, it's an indulgent, hedonistic society. So even though there's plenty of supply, there's also plenty of demand. And therefore the prices keep going up. The entire monarchy will turn to heresy. And no one could rebuke anyone. It's fascinating to see like a lot of these elements, right? In other words, everyone is right. Everyone's opinion is right. Everyone's feeling is right. And even if they're wrong, no one could say anything to the other. This is part of Rabbi Yitzchak. In Ben David ba, so Ben David, Mashiach doesn't come literally again until the entire monarchy, the entire government turns to heresy. Amar Rava says, what's the pasuk? Kulo hafach lavan taharhu. So it says, interesting, it's a little bit of a play on saras. What happens with saras? If the entire body turns white, then ultimately, again, it's tahar. So when there is this unfortunate, comprehensive change in society, that society as a whole turns heretical, that society as a whole just loses it, interestingly enough, that's actually a sign that redemption is on the way. Fascinating. Rabbanon, ki yadin Hashem amo, ki yira Hashem, ki yireya, ki azlas yad va'afes atzar va'azov, ein bein David ba, Mashiach only comes at shiyirbu hamusaros, until there is a proliferation, ultimately, again, we'll say, of the musaros. Now, again, we'll see exactly what that means in just a moment. Until, again, there is a diminution, ultimately, again, of Talmidim. Rashi says over here, so there's no Talmidei Chachamim. When there's no Talmidei Chachamim, ultimately, again, there's no one to restore Klal Yisrael to the right path. There are Mosers, people who give over the Jews to the government. So you have all of this together, and once again, you paint a picture of a society that is highly spiritually deficient. Until there is poverty. This is interesting. Mashiach only comes when Klal Yisrael despairs of ever being redeemed. Isn't that incredible? Only once we give up hope on redemption does redemption come. Shnei Amar, ve'efes atzor va'azov. Kiviyachol, ein somich v'azor li'yisrael. Ki had Rabbi Zera, both says it's fascinating. Ki had Rabbi Zera, ki have a mashkich rabbanan de ma'askibei. So we're going to talk about this more on Amud Beis. When Rabbi Zera would find groups of rabbanim trying to figure out the date of messianic arrival. Both say this is going to be Amud Beis. A lot of rabbanim spending a lot of time, when is Mashiach coming? When is it happening? Whenever Rabbi Zera would find people trying to figure out Mashiach is coming, Amar lahu, b'matusa ba'inu minaychu, lo tirchakuha. He said, please do not delay the arrival of Mashiach. By trying to figure out when Mashiach is coming, ultimately, again, you're delaying his arrival. Isn't this fascinating? Why? Isn't this supposed to say? This is incredible Gemara. There are three things that come when you stop looking for them. Rabbi says incredible Gemara. What are the three things? Number one, Elohim, Mashiach, Metzia, Va'akrav. Three things happen when you're not looking for them. Mashiach, finding a lost object, and a scorpion. So let's work backwards, right? Scorpions, so apparently, again, the way scorpions work, Rashi points out, is that they sneak up on you out of nowhere, and they sting you. Okay, Mitzia, so we know this, right? In other words, if you go out looking for just somebody's lost object, you're not going to find anything. But somehow, if you're just minding your own business, doing your thing, you stumble across stuff. And the last is Mashiach. If you don't look for him, he comes. In other words, if you stop trying to figure out when he's going to come, then we're going to say, what's the pshat with this? And this is so profound. What the Gemara is saying is like this. Instead of trying to figure out when Mashiach is coming, live the kind of life that would make him come. In other words, sometimes the Gemara is saying, we spend so much time trying to figure out when future events are going to occur instead of recognizing that if we just make ourselves better, then the things we want out of life will naturally occur. Right? We think about it just in general, even not Mashiach, right? I spend so much time trying to figure out, when is my marriage going to improve? When is my parnasa going to improve? When are my kids? When am I this? When am I this? All different things going to improve. Well, instead of worrying about when it's going to turn around, there's something better. Do something to turn it around. Change yourself. change your life, work harder, put in more effort, right? We spend so much time when. We're just talking about when. Just worry about what can you do right now to improve the status quo of your life. What can you do right now to bring about the brachos that you so badly want out of life? Stop waiting and start doing. Incredible Gemara. Rav Katina. So now, interesting, now that we just spoke about, by the way, not trying to figure out when Mashiach is going to come, the Gemara is going to go into an exhaustive discussion about when Mashiach is going to come. All right, so again, we'll say because there's two different schools of thought. That's what I'm saying. Just like what brings about messianic redemption, right? Again, is it terrible stuff? Is it good stuff? It's two schools of thought. Contemplating or trying to figure out when Mashiach is going to come, also two schools of thought. So we go, Rav Katina. Shis alfi shani avama. The world is 6,000 years old. So we'll say, everybody knows this, but this is where we all speak on this. The world was programmed to operate for 6,000 years. That's the way of the world. How are those 6,000 years? How are they? And then 1,000 years of destruction. In other words, we'll say, so apparently the way that the world is structured to work is, the world as we know it will exist for 6,000 years. After that, again, there's like a reboot. 1,000 years of desolation. Remember again, we had the Gemara, that what happens to the tzaddikim during those 1,000 years? Remember again, what happened? They're given wings and they fly over the water. The tzaddikim who are brought back by Tches HaMesim, they don't die during that time. They hover for 1,000 years, and then after that 1,000 years, another world. Another world is created. So the Gemara says, Shnei Amar, v'niskav Hashem levado b'yomahu. Abai Amar Shrei Charav. Abai says, no, the world exists for 6,000 years, and then for 2,000 years there's destruction. Shnei Amar Yichayenu miyomayim. B'yom K'mana v'nachas v'nuchki alefanav. Tanya Kaval says Rav Katina. The Brisa that supports Rav Katina. The Gemara says, Kishim Sha'ashviyas. Mishameta Shana Achas Zayin Shanim. Just like Shemitah, right? Ultimately, again, there's a Shemitah year once every 7 years. Kacha olam mishamet alef shanim l'shiva apayim shana. So to the world, so to speak, undergoes a Shemitah once every 7,000 years. In other words, the world exists for 6,000 years, and in the year the 7,000th year, ultimately, like Yachol is like the Shemitah, universal Shemitah, where everything is reset. Shnei v'niskav Hashem levado b'yomahu. So it's interesting, by the way, that we often think that pasuk v'niskav Hashem levado, that Hashem will be established by Himself. Also, like, it's more a reference to the Messianic era. The Gemara understands over here, know that the levado refers after the 6,000 years of this world, and everything is reset. There'll only be HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the universe for that 1,000-year period. V'omer, Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbos, Liyom Shekul HaShabbos. Incredible. What's the Yom Shekul HaShabbos? Apparently, again, that 1,000 years that follows the 6,000 years of this world. Incredible. V'omer, Ki Elav Shana Be'enecha K'yom Esmo, Ki Yavar, Tan Be'elio, Sheishes Alafim Shana Havi Alma. The world will exist for 6,000 years. So the Gemara says, Havi Alma, Shnei Alpayim, Tovavo. So now, how are those 6,000 years broken up? For the first 6,000 years, for the first 2,000 years of the world, most of this is retrospective now, right? The world that we're in. For the first 2,000 years, there was Tovavo. Now, what does it mean there's Tovavo? That Torah wasn't given. Right? For the first 2,000 years, the Torah was not given in the world. Okay. Shnei Apayim. Or Shnei Alafim. Torah. So ultimately, the next 2,000 years are the years of Torah. Ushnei Alafim Yosef Mashiach. And the last 2,000 of the 6,000 are Yosef Mashiach. You must say now, again, we see this, we're like, that's us. That would put us, right? That would put us. We're in the last 2,000, and there's no Mashiach yet. Sadik Zayin Base 97b, Obabanosenu, Sherabu, Yatsu Mehem Mashi Yatsu. We'll say this is a profound statement. But because we've messed up, Yatsu Mehem Mashi Yatsu. When you say, when I don't do what's right in life, when I make poor decisions, do you know what happens? Yatsu mehem mashi yatsu. What comes out of your decisions is what comes out of your decisions. So many times in life we find ourselves in bad spots and we wonder, how did we get here? How did we get here? It's not that complicated how I got here. I made a series of poor decisions. Some of them acutely poor, some of them nuanced poor, and that's what got me where I got to. It's not rocket science. The good news is, the same bad decisions that got me into the spot where I am, hopefully, if I change my decision-making processes, can get me out of it. Maybe not fully out of it, because often in life you can't reverse a lot of the damage that you've done, but at least hopefully I could choose wisely, I could choose differently going forward. So again, that's the way the world was supposed to work. 2,000 years without Torah, Tovo, 2,000 years with Torah, and then 2,000 years, the last 2,000 of the 6,000 was supposed to be Yemos HaShem. That's what it was supposed to be. But because of our sinful behavior, Yatsu Mehen Mashi Yatsu. Incredible. Amar Lahu Eliyad Rav Yehuda, Achod Rav Salah Hasida. Both says incredible. This is Eliyad Navi talking. Now this is Eliyad Navi. And Navi says to Rav Yehuda, Eina Olam Pachos Mishmonun V'chamisha Yovlos. The world will not exist for less than 85 Yovel cycles. U'b'Yovel ha'achron ben David ba. In the last Yovel cycle, that's when Mashiach will come. Amar Rav Yehuda says to Yo, B'tchilasa b'sofo. Does Mashiach come at the beginning or the end of that Yovel cycle? Amar Lai, Eini Yodea. Eliyahu says, I don't know. V'kala o eina kala. Does the Yovel cycle finish or not? Amar Lai, Eini Yodea. Eliyahu said, I don't know. I don't know. It was said, by the way, how this is so profound. Why is it so profound? Eliyahu Navi is the one who announces the arrival of Mashiach. Shabbos say, Eliyahu Navi says, I don't know. So in other words, there are certain things about this whole Geula that no one knows except the Ribono Shel Olam, which is why, by the Rebbe say, why we go back to the statement ultimately again of Rabbi Zera, that maybe our avoda is not to focus so much on when, but to focus so much more on what. When is Mashiach going to come? I don't know. I don't know. So, and the truth is, here's the good news. I'm in good company. Who else doesn't know? Who else doesn't know? Eliyahu Navi doesn't know either. So if Eliyahu Navi doesn't know, I'm certainly not going to figure out. So if I can't figure out the when, then what I need to be hyper-focused on is the what. What do I need to do to bring about Geula? What do I need to do to bring about Mashiach? What do I need to do in my personal life to try to fix my personal mistakes and the mistakes of the Klal? It's incredible. Incredible. So the Mar goes weiter. Sholach lei. No. Ravashi says, Haki Amar lei, ad hacha lo tistachi, le mikan ve'ilech istachi le. So Rashi says over here, ad hacha lo tistachi le, ad yovel ha'acheron lo titzapelo. So what Eliyahu Navi was trying to tell Yehuda was, listen, I don't know exactly when Mashiach is coming, but one thing is clear is, there's no point in waiting for him until that last Yovel. Once that last Yovel comes, then start waiting. I will say, so again, what I want to point out is something amazing. These Gemaras reflect the mindset that there is a predetermined time for Mashiach. And that's it. What you do, what you don't, is a predetermined time. There's another school of thought that says there is no predetermined time. There may be a, what's the word? Like a defined end date. Mashiach must come by this date. But it doesn't necessarily preclude the possibility of advancing his arrival through our spiritually meritorious behavior. Rav Chanan bar Tachliv Rav Yosef. Rav Chanan bar Tachliv said to Rav Yosef, Matzasi Adam Echad, listen to this. Obiyado Megillah Achaz Ksuva Ashuris V'Lashon HaKodesh. Listen to this, crazy. So Rav Chanan bar Tachliv said like this, I found the guy. This guy had a scroll. The scroll was written in Ashuris, Lashon HaKodesh. And it said, "V'amarti lo minayin lo zu." From where, right? So amarti lo zu minayin lecha. Where do you have the scroll from? Amrali lechayalos shel Romi niskarti. You know, I traveled with the Roman soldiers. Ubein ginze Romi mitzasiya. And I found this scroll amongst the pilfered treasures of Rome. Rome took this from Klal Yisrael. I found this in the treasures. V'kasu ba, and I found this following message. La'achar daled al payim masayim v'tishim ve'echad shana l'briyaso shel olam yosum mehen milchamos. So listen to this. Shel olam yitom. The following was written in the scroll. After 4,000, right? After 4,000 daled al payim masayim tishva. After 4,291 years, ha'olam yitom. The world will cease to exist. Okay? Mehen, as the Gemara says, Mehem milchamos taninim. Some of those years will be wars of great sea creatures. Mehem milchamas Gog u'Magog. Some of them will be Gog u'Magog. Ushar yemos HaMashiach. And the rest of the years of the world will be yemos HaMashiach. Ve'en HaKadosh Baruch Hu mechadesh es olamo ela la'achar shivas alpayim shana. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu only restarts the world after 7,000 years. Remember again, this seems to go with the motif of 6,000 active creation, 1,000 of Tov Avo, and then a restarting of the universe. After 5,000 years, so the Gemara says, Tanya Rabbi Nassan says, Mikra zeh no cave v'yored at home. The following pasuk ultimately again literally pierces the world until the depth. What's the pasuk? Ki od chazon lamoed v'yafach leketz v'lo yechazev im yismamea chakelo ki bo yovo lo ya'achar v'lo ya'achar. So we'll say, so again, this is an incredible pasuk from Chabakuk. So we'll say, let's translate the pasuk and then we'll interpret it. Ki od chazon lamoed, there will be a vision for the future, for the appointed time. V'yafech leketz v'lo yechazev. The end will come, and you will not be deceived. Im yismamea chakelo. If he's delayed, wait for him. Ki bo yavo lo ya'acher. He will come, and he will not be delayed. Here you go, Bosai. Lo karabasenu sheyedarshin ad idan idnin upalag idnin. It's not like the Rabbanon who say that Mashiach will only come at a defined time. Rashi says over here, ad idan idnin upalag idnin. Idan ki idan hagalo shal Mitzrayim v'hanu dal meos beis idnin ches meos hanu beis meos upalag idan meos sachakol. So we'll say it's not like the Rabbanon who say that somehow Messianic redemption is based on the calculations of previous galos. V'lo Rabbi Shmuel Silber hechaltem lachem dima v'atashkimu b'dmaos shlish. And not like Rabbi Shmuel. Now, what did Rabbi Shmuel say? Rashi says over here, "V'atashkei b'dmaos shlish kilomar Hersch kos mekadosh baruch hu ben galos legalos badal shlish galos adam ki kan galos." So what it's referring to over here is these other Rabbanon, right? The Rabbanon themselves and Rabbi Shmuel, they came up with defined amounts of time until Mashiach comes. The halacha doesn't follow any of them. V'lo Rabbi Akiva shehayadorish od achas ma'ati. Vani marish eshamayim v'esa'aretz. So as I said, ultimately again, and it's not Rabbi Akiva either, right? Rabbi Akiva also gives a calculation. Ella malchus rishon shevim shana, malchus shniya chamishim ushtayim, umalchus ben koziva shtei shanim umechza. So as I said, what is this? Rather, what's the proper calculation? Malchus rishon. Now, what this sounds like is the first Beis Hamikdash was 70 years. Second Beis Hamikdash, malchus shniya. 52 years, and Malchus ben Koziva, Bar Kochba, who we just learned about, is 2.5 years. So we'll say, what does that mean? So the Gemara seems to be saying is as follows. The Gemara seems to be saying that halacha l'maisa, we don't know when Mashiach is going to come. We have no idea when Mashiach is going to come. And what happens most of the time between now and Mashiach is filled with incredible tumultuous activity. But there are periods of tranquility. There are periods of calmness. So that's what he's saying over here. During the first Beis Hamikdash, ultimately again, there's 70 years. Well, that seems to refer to Galus itself. Second Beis Hamikdash, ultimately 52 years. And then there is the 2.5 year reign of Bar Kochba. Now, the 2.5 year reign of Bar Kochba was actually a relatively good time for Klal Yisrael, right? We were on top. So the idea is the world is filled with difficulties. The world is filled with turbulent times. There are periods of tranquility. What we believe is at some point in time, Mashiach is going to come. But do not lose yourself in the calculations of those who try to understand when he's going to come, because often those calculations are not correct. The Gemara goes weiter. What is the meaning of that phrase? Literally, again, the bones should break, or the bones should become swollen of those who try to calculate when Mashiach is going to come. As I say, that is an exercise in futility to try to figure out when Mashiach is going to come. Because what happens for those who go ahead and try to calculate the Mashiach is going to arrive? What happens? They calculate, they come up with a time, and then the Mashiach doesn't come. What do they say? You see, he's not coming. It's dangerous to calculate the date of Messianic arrival. Ella, we'll say it's incredible. Ella, chakelo. What is our avoda by Mashiach? What's our avoda? Wait. That is our avoda to wait. Shneimar, im yismamea chakelo. Even if he's delayed, just wait. Shema tomar, anu mechakin v'hu einu mechakeh. Maybe you'll say ultimately again that we wait, but he doesn't wait. No, we're waiting. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is waiting. Everybody's waiting. So again, if we're waiting for Mashiach, and Mashiach is waiting to come, so why doesn't he just come? Who's holding him back? Midas Hadin. So we'll say ultimately again, Midas Hadin. In other words, that the attribute of strict justice says Klal Yisrael is not yet deserving of Mashiach. So the Gemara says, but if strict justice is preventing Mashiach from coming, then why are we waiting? Then obviously again, waiting is in futility, because we can't come, Mashiach's not going to let him go. The Gemara says, L'kabel schar. Because ultimately, again, there is reward for waiting. Shneimar ashrei kol chochelo. We're going to stop over today, but what does this mean that there's reward? First of all, tremendous nechama. We're waiting for Mashiach. Mashiach is waiting to come. The Torah wants some Mashiach, but the mitzvah, then the strict attribute of divine justice says it's not yet time. So then why wait if we know that our waiting is not going to make a difference? Because there is reward for waiting. What kind of reward? Because when you wait for something and you want it badly, it builds up that anticipatory excitement. And the greater the anticipatory excitement, the more I am ready to take decisive action to make things happen. Waiting is not an ends. Waiting is a means to push myself to do more, to be more, to bring about that which I want more than anything. The coming of Mashiach. Amen.